Welcome into Texans Today. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and on today's program, could the Texans be interested in trading for Falcons tight end Kyle Pitts? We're going to break down because we know the new Texans OC, Nick Caley, loves himself some tight ends, and just so happens a pretty good young one might hit the trade market. And I say might, but it's been reported by multiple NFL insiders that the Falcons are looking at trades. Jordan Schultz had this to say yesterday. Sources, multiple teams have reached out to the Falcons about the availability of Kyle Pitts. Nothing is imminent, and Atlanta would prefer to keep him, but I'm told it would take at least a day 2 pick to even spark serious talks. So this is something that I feel like the Falcons might be putting out there to garner more trade interest, saying, hey, we're not going to trade him, but if you want to give us a day 2 pick, then maybe we'll talk about it. And I was going to bring this up on the show yesterday, but had a ton of stuff to talk around Texans OTAs. And I asked y'all, hey, if you hit the like button, I'll talk about it today on my off day. Y'all delivered. So I came in here on my off day, and let's talk some Kyle Pitts. If you want to hit me up on social media, though, hit me up on X at Jeremy Chuggs, IG at Texans Today CS. And TikTok, it's at Jeremy Chuggs. If you have any more questions, concerns, or just want to hit me up, you can always do so on social media. Now, first, let's talk about why a Kyle Pitts trade would make sense for the Houston Texans. Why would they even do it in the first place, right? Well, number one, he has familiarity with the offense. And what do you mean by that? You never worked with Nick Caley? Well, that is correct. But the Falcons offensive coordinator, their current offensive coordinator, his name is Zach Robinson. And funny enough, he was the Rams QB coach in 2023. Why is this important? Because Caley and Robinson will both use a lot of the concepts, a lot of the schemes that they learned while a member of the Los Angeles Rams coaching staff and implement it in their own offense. So is it going to be the same offense that the Texans are going to run that the Falcons run this year? No, obviously, two different OCs. They're going to put their own spins on it, their own kind of twist on it. But the base level of the offense is going to be pretty similar because they both come from that Sean McVay tree. And I think Pitts would be able to get maybe not a fast track, but would be able to learn the verbiage and be able to learn the concepts that the Texans run a little bit quicker because of their similarity to what the Falcons do there in Atlanta. Number two, why it makes sense. He's shown some promise, and the Texans have shown this offseason and in the past couple offseasons, they're willing to take risks on guys and willing to bring guys in who maybe are coming off a little bit of a down year, right? They traded for Christian Kirk, a 7th-round pick for the Jags receiver that they were going to end up cutting, but the Texans said, hey, we see some value in him, so why not throw a pick towards getting this guy and bringing him in and seeing he can kind of revitalize his career. Kyle Pitts was taken in the top 10 as a tight end, something that we don't see very often. And in 2021, he showed out over 1,000 yards. Since then, hasn't been exactly the same, even though 2023, 2024, those numbers are nothing to scoff at, right? Over 600 yards in both those seasons on less than 60 receptions, 12.8, 12.6 average, 4 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns respectively. He has talent. He has skill. There's a reason why he was taken in the top 10. And this last point kind of goes in right with it. Caley loves talented tight ends. He loves tight ends. He was a tight end coach for the Patriots and the Los Angeles Rams. It is very well known that Caley loves the position of tight end. This was after his introductory press conference from Aaron Wilson. Nick Caley on emphasis at tight end position and his background coaching All-Pro Rob Gronkowski. And I quote, I like tight ends. I like them a lot. That's what he said. And I think, with the Texans tight end room where it is right now, if you insert Kyle Pitts, there's an argument to be made that he instantly becomes the best tight end that the Texans have on this roster. So before I tell you why it might not happen, why the Texans wouldn't be interested in trading for Kyle Pitts, I'm going to ask you folks this question right here. Here's my trade idea. The Texans received Kyle Pitts. The Falcons, in that tweet from Jordan Schultz, said they want a day 2 pick, so either a 2nd or 3rd rounder. I'm not willing to give a 2nd rounder for Kyle Pitts for a tight end on an expiring contract, but I'll give you the Texans 2026 3rd rounder. So go down in the comment section and let me know. Would you make this trade? Give me a yes, give me a no, give me your thoughts down below in the comment section. Kyle Pitts for a 3rd round pick. Now, I'd be down to do this trade. I would love to add Kyle Pitts to this offense, add him to this arsenal that CJ Stroud already has, and I think it would be a very intriguing offense if you add in Kyle Pitts into the mix. There are some things that make this a little bit difficult, though. And next up, I'll tell you why it doesn't make as much sense for the Texans to go out and make this move for Kyle Pitts. There's a couple reasons why the Texans wouldn't want to go ahead and make this trade. Before I do, quick shout out to our friends over at Fanatics. If you need a new lid this summer, just like these new Texans draft hats, it's going to be sunny. And I know we don't always want to rep a jersey or rep some other kind of Texan stuff, but it's always easy to throw on a cap, especially when it's hot outside. Go to chatsports.com/Texans hats. A ton of different styles available for you over there. My producer Tex, he's just cycling through them all for you right now. If you want to check out any of these and more, you can do so on that website. The link, chatsports.com/Texans hats, will be in the comment section and description of today's video. Go do a little window shopping, see what they have. A lot of hats on sale as well as we get into the summertime. Go check them all out with our friends over at Fanatics. Make sure to use the link, though, so they know that we sent you. Now, let's talk about why it doesn't make sense for the Texans to trade for Kyle Pitts. Number one, you have Dalton Schultz. And I'm not saying because, the Texans, have Dalton Schultz, they don't want to do it because he's the tight end one. It's more of a money thing when it comes to Dalton Schultz, right? If you release him, the 2025 dead cap is going to be $13.5 million. 2026, it would be $2.5 million. And you save $500,000. So releasing him, you're in a huge hole, right? If you trade for him, it's a dead cap over the next two seasons in 2025 and in 2026 of $2.5 million. And then in 2025, the savings are $11.5 million. So you're like, oh, yeah, they should just go ahead and trade him. Well, Kyle Pitts is on the trade market right now, and we'll see how much interest he gets. But a team will have to take on Schultz's contract, and it's not a light one, right? He's making around $14 million this year. And for his production level, I don't think a lot of teams would be willing to pay him $14 million to get Dalton Schultz this year. So I think both these options seem pretty unlikely to me for them to just release him and, eat all that dead money just for him to not be on the roster. Or obviously the Texans, if they made this move, would want to trade Dalton Schultz. But what team on the other end is going to want that contract and want to trade for Dalton Schultz? I think especially with that contract, you'd be lucky to get a 6th or 7th round pick for Dalton Schultz because a team would have to absorb that huge contract for a tight end that, let's face it, is not a top 5 tight end in the NFL right now. The second reason is because the Texans already do have a bunch of young tight ends. They drafted Cade Stover, was a rookie last year, former Ohio State teammate of CJ Stroud. He played decently, and Nick Caley had some good things to say about him from practices, saying that he really likes him as a developmental guy. You also have guys like Brevin Jordan, who was injured this past year, but has showed a lot of promise. The Texans, they didn't spend a early draft pick on him, but Luke Lachey out of Iowa State is another young tight end that the Texans like. Irv Smith Jr. isn't, I wouldn't say a young tight end, but he's another guy on this roster. But when I'm saying focus on the young tight ends, if you bring in a guy like Kyle Pitts and you, for some reason, keep Dalton Schultz, where does that put Cade Stover, a guy who you just drafted 2 years ago, right? He's going to get no burn, no play time at all. Same can be said about Brevin Jordan, somebody who you re-signed right after he got injured because you wanted to see him back in Houston for another year. I mean, before the start of last season, we were all talking Brevin Jordan might be the breakout player of the year for the Houston Texans before he had that season-ending injury. And then, like I said, you drafted out of Iowa Luke Lachey, who, was a 7th-round pick. I'm not going to mince words with it, not expecting a ton from him. But at the same time, he was Todd McShay's favorite 7th-round pick out of all the teams in the NFL. So Luke Lachey, especially with a tight end coach at OC and Nick Caley, could be another young guy who the Texans can develop and add some depth to this offense. And the last thing is the Texans, they need to focus on other positions because, right, like I said about the money thing, Kyle Pitts' base salary is $10.8 million this year. So if you trade for him and you don't get rid of Schultz, you won't be able to really improve other positions. And I think at this point for me, bigger priorities would be interior O-line if they need to add depth there, if they end up cutting guys or trading guys or need, some help there at the center or guard spots. And then backup running back. Because I don't really trust Dameon Pierce at this point. I really like Pierce. I want him to succeed. But if anything was to happen to Joe Mixon, I don't really have a lot of faith in Dameon Pierce being the RB1 for this team. So I'd rather the Texans spend a little bit of money in these two areas than go out and trade for a guy in Kyle Pitts, especially if they're not able to offload Dalton Schultz's contract in a trade. That's all I have for you on today's show, folks. You can hit me up on Twitter at Jeremy Chuggs. I'll be giving you the latest Texans news and rumors all year long. I got you covered. And if you made it to the end of today's video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We got you covered. Free content around the Texans all day, every day here on Texans Today. That's why we are the #1 Texans channel here on YouTube.